everyone. How are you doing today? Are you good? Are you refreshed? Are you ready for more? It's good to see you. What we're going to do today is, I don't know if you could hear that, the dog's going a little bit crazy here. What we're going to do today is we spent the last few days understanding why we want to practice compassion, and we try to lay a kind of a foundation that is going to be helpful for practicing compassion by thinking about the preciousness of our human rebirth and by the fact that it is not going to last. And so yesterday we spoke about how we normally find happiness and freedom from suffering, and how our actions are motivated by the happiness of this life. And because of this, our mind is very self-centered. And because the mind is self-centered and we have this belief in a self, that self exists in the way it appears, while in actuality that is not true. Due to that, when pleasure arises in the mind, we react with attachment, wanting more. And when suffering feelings arise in the mind, we react with aversion because we want to be separated from that. So that self-centered attitude, the root of that is a self-grasping mind. And if we keep acting from that mind, every action we are doing, although we want to be free from suffering, although we want to be happy, all these actions are actually causes for suffering. So if we want to create real causes for happiness, that we're going to not just experience the happiness, which is pleasure in this life at this moment, but if we say, I actually want to connect with a happiness that is not just the pleasure of the senses, but something that is more meaningful, more maybe stable, more based on reasoning, then we can, develop or generate the happiness that is the result of compassion. So today we're going to talk about how we can prepare the mind for practicing compassion. And before we start, we do a little meditation to center the mind, to calm the mind, to focus the mind. So for that, you can sit in a position that is conducive for setting such a motivation. And recall why you chose to be here. What is it that you would like to achieve during this course? Or what you would like to receive in order to develop something within yourself? And then see if you can set that motivation in like one sentence to make it really clear for yourself. And then make a very strong determination. This is what I'm going to do. So today we're going to start with talking about how to prepare the mind for practicing compassion. Compassion is a very profound practice, and I'm sure you all know that. So you cannot just start there. You need to create some kind of foundation that is going to give you the support to do the practice and also to sustain the practice. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how we prepare the mind before we engage into practices developing compassion, and we're going to do some practices that can prepare the mind for that. And we're going to talk about how we start a session, how we finish a session, or how we start an activity and how we finish an activity, because that can help us to really make changes in our life. And we'll also talk about why it is like that. So in Buddhism, we say whatever practice you do, whatever activity you do, if you do that activity with mindfulness and concentration, then that activity becomes much more powerful. So mindfulness and concentration is not necessarily connected to virtuous actions. You can also do non-virtuous actions with mindfulness and concentration. Right? If you are a robber and you want to get into the bank, you need mindfulness and concentration in order to make sure that you do everything right and be successful. So mindfulness and concentration helps to focus the mind, and that means that disturbing emotions, they have less opportunity to arise. The conditions for disturbing emotions to arise, they are not there. So if we're going to use mindfulness and concentration for developing compassion, the essence of compassion is connection. Everywhere where there is no connection, where there is no compassion, where there is no connection, there is a lack of compassion. Or where there is a lack of compassion, there is no connection. And we can think about connection with ourselves, we can think about connection with others, and we can also connect with reality itself. And I think the more we have these three aspects of connection happening, the more we become in tune with who we really are. The more we access our potential for love and compassion and wisdom. So connection is really the key word for compassion. Everywhere where there's pain, there is disconnection. Right? Sometimes I think in that way, the mind is almost like a computer where you have only two options, the 0 and the 1, I think, when you do computer programming. And so the 0, we can say that is the disconnection. And the disconnection is, we can put there pain, and we can also associate that with disturbing emotions and with holding things to exist that in actuality do not exist, living in a fantasy. That is all disconnection. Connection is living in accordance with reality, reaching out, seeing that there is no difference between me and you, feeling that connection, making that connection, not just on the physical level, but also on the mental level, also on the emotional level, also on the spiritual level. So if we think, if we feel in our heart, you know, and some people talk a little bit about fear. If we think about how we feel when we are very occupied with ourselves, and that can be when there is fear in the mind, or when there is a problem in the mind, when there is worry in the mind, what happens in the heart? Does it feel spacious, relaxed, and open? Or does it feel like a cramp, or like you withdraw, you hold back? How does it feel in the heart? And when we are occupied with ourselves, where is the mind? Is the mind with what you are feeling, or is the mind in the future that hasn't come yet? Or is it still dwelling in the past because something has happened in the past? And so we start every activity with bring the mind to the present moment, you know, because we want to move away from that mind that is so occupied with oneself and that is dwelling in the future or dwelling in the past. We want to bring that mind to the present moment and then let it soften up and open. And we can do a little exercise, you know, that can help you feel how easy it is when you bring the mind to the present moment, that the mind immediately opens up, you know. And what we can do is just rub your hands together, you know, for 10, 20 seconds, rub it together. And maybe you breathe out a few times deeply. And then you stop and you hold your hands like 10 centimeters away from your heart. And you feel your heart. So maybe you feel that your heart is already softening and opening. So then we can extend it further. So we do another rubbing and another breathing in and deeply breathing out. And then you hold your hands outwards. And you feel what happens in your hands, you feel what happens in your heart. And you feel what happens to the space around you, especially in front of you. So if you find yourself that the mind is not in the present moment and you have trouble bringing the mind back, you know, this can be a very simple exercise that can help you. All right, the mind becomes back to the present moment, the mind becomes quiet. Could you feel that? Was there a good experience when you do that? And you are welcome to type it in the chat. Yes, there was. That's wonderful. So bringing, and you can keep typing if you want, I'll sometimes read what you are writing. So what kind of techniques do we have in Buddhism in order to bring the mind to the present moment? It's a simple practice we can use easily anytime, yes. And from Warren, breathing has the same impact on me, yes. Well, then you must already have a lot of awareness to that breathing when that's the case. It helps to warm up the heart. That's true, Sriyam. That's what it does, and the space expanding out. So you give yourself some space. You know, we are not this. We are not this little self holding on to itself. You know, we are not that. We are so much more space than we think we are. So do it at any time. You know, it warms up the heart. That is really what it does. And then that helps to open up the heart. When the heart is cold, you know, the heart is not connected. It is shrinked. It is withdrawn in itself. So in terms of mindfulness, you know, every time when we start a session, we do a little bit of mindfulness, bring the mind to the present moment. And I give you some kind of keys that you can use that can be helpful to bring the mind to the present moment. So somebody says, that is a great tool. What was the second one? So the hands, and you hold them against your own heart or a little bit away from your heart. And the second one is that you open up your hands to space. So bringing the mind to the present moment, the tool we have is, the first one is the body. The body is always in the present moment. The body is never in the future, the body in the past. So bringing the mind to the body is one particular part of your body. Bring the mind to the body, and the mind goes from one part to another part. Just let the mind to go, but you follow it and you keep it with the body, right? That is the most, if you're not trained, that is the most simple practice to do in order to bring the mind to the present moment. Then if you're very good at that, so what you can do is you can first let the mind just go wherever it wants. Then you can do exercises. We did at one time a body scan where you go from the top of the head, you go through all the parts of the body, moving downwards, just to make your mind a little bit more disciplined, right? You direct your mind and you would like your mind to go in this direction. And then you can also focus on one aspect of your body, one part of your body, if you feel the need to do so, you know. There are techniques that use when you have painful experiences in your body, you know, they do very strong concentration on that pain. And that can release that pain, that can be helpful to release the pain. But that's not really a technique that we use to bring the mind to the present moment. You know, that is more a healing technique that you can use. So then another thing that we can use is the breath. You know, we are breathing in every moment. And also the breath is just as the body, always in the present moment. It's never in the future. It is never in the past. So when we become aware of the breath, automatically the mind comes to the present moment. And so there are many techniques related to breathing meditation. And I would, if you are interested in that, you know, look it up on the internet. There are many courses that you can do. There are different techniques that you can follow. You know, some observe the breath at the abdomen. Some observe the breath at the nostrils. And I think there are, and some then they use, you know, for instance, counting the breath forward, counting the breath backwards. And these are all just little tools to bring the mind to the present moment. So that's the second, observing the breath. And then the third one is our feelings. You know, within the body, feelings arise in every moment. And we can focus on these feelings. What am I feeling? And if it is difficult to know what you're feeling, you could just divide feelings into pleasant or unpleasant. Make it very simple. Do I feel something pleasant or do I feel something unpleasant? And then when you identify the feeling, you say, there is a pleasant feeling. The pleasant feeling is coming and pleasant feeling is going. All feelings, they come and go. I can feel them. I do not have any need to hold on to them or to repeat them. I just experience them in the moment. And then the next feeling comes, and the next feeling comes. So focus is very helpful to bring the mind to the present moment. And then the fourth, how you say that? So these are related to the body, right? Scanning the whole body, watching your breath, and observing your feelings. And these feelings can be physical. And then we also have our mind, and the mind is always in the present moment as well. It is just that certain aspects of the mind take us away into the future or in the past. But we can focus upon the mind in different ways. And I think focusing on the mind can be a very beautiful meditation. I would suggest, if you're a beginner, to start with the body, more course. And then you go to the breath. And if you're more familiar with that, you go to the feelings. And then from there, you go to the mind. So you build it up in that way. And so then what we observe in the mind is the spacious aspect of the mind, the nature of the mind. So we say the mind is that which is clear and knowing. Clear means it is like space. And within that space-like nature of the mind, all kinds of, we call them mental factors, arise. Our attachment, our aversion, our anger, all the disturbing emotions, but also our concentration, our wisdom, our loving kindness, they all arise in the mind and dissolve back into the mind. So sometimes we can visualize the mind like space. And whatever arises within the mind is like clouds. And these clouds, they come and go. What we normally do is we hold on to the clouds. And then we think about the clouds. And then the clouds become bigger and bigger and bigger. And what Buddhism says, just step back. Yesterday, somebody said, I think it was Emilio, when I hold the space, so we can do that for ourselves in the mind. You step back and you connect with that spacious-like aspect of the mind. And you try to let whatever arises in the mind come and go. You observe it coming and going. Some people say you become the witness of your thoughts, the witness of your emotions. Some say, I think about the space-like nature of the mind, and I visualize it as being space. And whatever arises in my mind, I visualize that as being clouds. I can try to look in between the clouds. Sometimes we're so focused on the clouds, we do not see the space in which the clouds arise. So you try to focus between the clouds, behind the clouds. And the more you do that, the more the clouds will disappear. And then when you really can see that space-like nature of the mind, you let it expand further and further and further. So these are very good mindfulness practices you can do at any time that you feel overwhelmed. And somebody says, I find it difficult to do all this when there are many people around me. And yes, it is extremely difficult to do that. Especially when you're not trained, and even if you're trained. So if you want to practice mindfulness, it is very good to do that maybe before everyone is awake. You wake up 10 minutes earlier and you take these 10 minutes to just be present with yourself. I wouldn't advise to do that with people around you. Withdraw, go to your bedroom, sit on your bed, do it there, 10 minutes. Say that you need a rest, but you actually go and meditate. And Sri Ram says, what distinguishes mind from space? Are they not the same? What makes them different? So mind is that which is clear and knowing. So it is space-like, but within the mind there is always a knower, a knowing aspect. And that aspect is not present in space. That's very different. Mind, so whatever is on this planet made out of the elements is a very different, that's a material, that's an energy made out of matter. That's a very different energy than the energy of the mind. But the mind has also a space-like aspect. And because it has a space-like aspect, things arise in the mind and dissolve back into the mind. So these are two totally different energies. And what makes the mind is that there is a knower present. There is awareness. So then we can also practice concentration. And practicing concentration means that you're going to be focused on one object. That can be the breath. You can develop calm abiding and dependence upon the breath. But in Buddhism, we often use an image that we visualize here in front of us. An image of a Buddha, an image of a holy being. And we visualize that up here and we concentrate on just that. And so when you try to develop this kind of mind, you want to have very short sessions, like you try to hold 20 seconds, 30 seconds. That's already very long if you could hold your concentration on one object. Very, concentration feels more intense. You put more effort to direct your mind. Mindfulness is more loose. It is mindful, it is resting on the object, it is not forgetting the object, but it's not so concentrated. So focusing on the spacious aspect of the mind, on the space-like nature of the mind. I just said, some people call it an observer, but actually I think I wasn't correct. I think when you focus on the space-like nature of the mind, your object is the space-like nature.
Just lost internet.
Oh, really? No, I'm connected. Am I connected? Can you see me?
Yeah, it just came back.
Okay. Did you lose me for a few minutes?
We did for maybe 20 seconds.
20 seconds. Okay. I'm back. So I just mentioned that the space-like nature, that when you observe the space-like nature, you're observing things arising in your mind. But actually, I think when you are observing the space-like nature of the mind, you are observing that. You focus on the space-like nature. You're not focused on seeing the clouds passing. You want the clouds, you're actually ignoring the clouds. You want to see past the clouds. Right, that is observing the nature of the mind. And then standing back and observing what is happening in your mind, that is a different meditation. You know, some people, they also do, you sit in a space at home or wherever, and you observe the sounds of the cars, the sound of your family, the sound, you observe the sounds coming and going, without doing anything with them. You just see them as sounds. I'm not sure. Some people find it a very helpful practice. You try for yourself. I'm not sure how much mindful. I think maybe it can help you to let go a little bit of attachment towards sounds or attachment towards things that you're seeing. But you're still training your sense consciousnesses. And what we really want to do in Buddhism is training your mental consciousness. So if you want to observe your whatever arises in the mind, coming and going, you know, that can be very helpful. So how can you observe the space-like nature of the mind when thoughts keep bombarding all the time? How do you get away from the thoughts? I think, I'm not sure if I'm correct, but I hear a little wish that you want to get rid of your thoughts. They're so overwhelming. And I think that makes the thoughts even more strong. So if you have a lot of thoughts in the mind and you want to observe the nature of the mind, you know, maybe you don't start yet with the nature, but you start with your body, you start with your breath as an introduction. And then when you are you have a little bit more calm in your mind, you start to observe the nature of your mind. And then it can still be that there are too many thoughts, right? But if you can observe, if you try to observe the space-like nature of the mind, and the mind is full of thoughts, I would say imagine the space-like nature behind your thoughts. You know, be totally okay that your mind is full of thoughts. And you say, wow, my mind is full of thoughts, you know, and maybe you want to sit a little bit with that and say, wow, the mind is so full. My mind goes crazy, you know, but be okay with that. Your attitude is, that's just how it is. Fully accepting, no judgment. This is how it is. And you stay with that, and you stay with that. It can be that the thoughts start to calm down, but you might be still, you know, too many thoughts. Then tell yourself, this is actually not my natural state, you know. It is like being in a country like in Holland, you know, where there is overcast all the time. There are clouds all the time, and you do not see the blue sky for days, for weeks. But it doesn't mean the blue sky is not there. So when you sit with all these thoughts that are like that overcast that looks like it's never going to go away, think about that there is a sky beyond these clouds. There is a sky-like nature, a space-like nature of the mind. And you focus on that. You let the thoughts do whatever they want to do. You do not try to stop them. You just let them do whatever they do. We cannot control the thoughts by pushing them away. We control the thoughts by knowledge. If you know there is a space-like nature of your mind, then, and you focus on that, that has the power that the thoughts start to come down. So that awareness, that blue net, that sky-like nature or space-like nature is there, that knowledge, and focusing on that, even if it is just an image that you have of it and you have never seen it, it doesn't matter. You just visualize that it is there. That has the power. So you make that visualization stronger and stronger. And so that starts to counteract that huge disturbance that is in your mind. So I said that we train our mental consciousness, and somebody said, do we have different types of consciousness? Yes, I have a visual consciousness. I have auditive consciousness. I have a taste consciousness. You know, for all the senses, for the five senses, we have a consciousness. They're all the same consciousness, but they have different functions. The mental consciousness, you know, whatever pleasure, whatever displeasure we experience in dependence on the sense consciousnesses, we cannot do so much about that. This is just due to our karma ripening. But our mental consciousness is the one that we can really train in reacting in a different way, or instead of reacting, starting to acting, so that we gain more control. So the control over the disturbing emotions we get by developing our mental consciousness. You know, sometimes I do tanka painting and somebody said, oh, wow, you can build up so much concentration by doing tanka painting. And one of my teachers was present when he said that, and he said, no, you won't. Because with tanka painting, you are training your visual consciousness. You're not going to use that in any way with your meditation. And I was a little bit taken back by that, but, you know, by thinking about it, it's true. It's true. Being able to, some people, they use meditation, they watch at a candle. I don't know. I shouldn't make fun of that, but, you know, just watching the candle, looking at the candle, looking at the candle. And they think they are developing their concentration. But I can look at the candle and my mental consciousness can go to a totally different place, you know, thinking about what I'm going to do next. And so my mental consciousness is not focused on that candle. If you're very good, you might be able to keep your mind also with the candle, you know, then it might have some influence, but not because you look at the candle, but because you are thinking about the candle. All right. I'm going to leave the questions for now because otherwise we never, I will come back to that later, but not now. So then what we can, so these are all kinds of preparation for your meditation. The more mindfulness we have, the more concentration we have, the more we can keep our mind focused on the topic when we are going into the next stage of the meditation. So one very good preparation for developing compassion is contemplating what we call the four immeasurables. And I should have put that on a sheet, and I don't think I did. Let me have a look. Sometimes I prepare sheets, but then I forget I did that. So I'll see if we have luck with that. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to put them up for you. Share the screen. Here they are. The four immeasurables, or sometimes they are called the four immeasurable thoughts. And the four immeasurables are: may all beings attain happiness and its causes. May all beings be free from suffering and its causes. May all beings never be separated from the joy that is free of misery. And may all beings abide in equanimity, free from bias of attachment and aversion. And I will put this in the folder, right? So if you do not necessarily have to write them down. So if we look into what does this have to do with compassion, we see that the second line, that is what we define as compassion, having the wish for all beings to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. So in terms of the three types of suffering that we talked about yesterday, may all beings be free from suffering means may all beings be free from experiencing painful experiences, the suffering of pain or the suffering of suffering. And may they also be free from the causes of that. And so yesterday we talked that the causes of the suffering of pain is engaging in the 10 non-virtuous actions. So you wish sentient beings not to engage in these actions, knowing that they're going to lead to suffering. And so everyone is there. So when we say, may all beings attain happiness and its causes, then happiness refers in this case to the pleasant feelings that we are so attached to, but may sentient beings have pleasurable experiences in their life. And then when we say, and its causes, we have to think, what are the causes for these pleasurable experiences? They are engaging in the virtuous actions. They come from benefiting others. So that is what you wish, So when you contemplate the four immeasurables, you try to recall your knowledge about what are you actually saying? What does happiness mean? What does the causes of happiness mean? What is freedom of suffering? What does it mean, the causes for suffering? We can see in this world many beings who are engaging in non-virtuous actions, right? They're creating a lot of suffering for others. And so what if we see them as beings who are creating causes for so much suffering for themselves? Would that help to soften the mind? So then the next one is, may all beings never be separated from the joy that is free of misery. So the joy that is free of misery, or the joy that is free of suffering, refers to the mind that it's not really arising, but the mind that arises when the disturbing emotions are not there. So when we start to counteract the disturbing emotions, when we start to create causes that we have less disturbing emotions, more and more joy starts to arise in the mind. When we totally remove all the disturbing emotions, I mentioned that yesterday or the day before yesterday, there is great joy in the mind. So this is the mind of joy that is free of suffering. It is the joy of liberation. It is the joy of enlightenment. And then the last one is, may all beings abide in equanimity, free from bias of attachment and aversion. So attachment, our mind is not free from the bias of attachment and aversion, right? Yesterday we saw that as soon as pleasure is in the mind, there is attachment in the mind. And as soon as there is displeasure in the mind, there is aversion in the mind. With respect to objects, you know, I'm not so much interested in that. But with respect to other sentient beings, we have the same reactions. We like somebody, attachment is there. We don't like somebody, aversion is there. And if we make that bigger, you know, on the basis of having aversion for someone, if we make that bigger and we have anger towards someone, then we do not wish them well anymore, right? All the conflicts, all the problems that we have in life comes from the fact that we do not abide in equanimity. Comes from the fact that we are totally controlled by the 8 worldly dharmas that we spoke about yesterday. So when we talk about equanimity, you move away from your biased attitude that is all about, I like this, but I don't like that. You take it as it comes. All right, I'll stop sharing this and I'll have a look at what is coming. So we will talk about equanimity in tomorrow, and there are different, in Buddhism, equanimity can have 3 meanings. So sorry, Todd asks, can you define equanimity? So in Buddhism it has 3 meanings, and I will explain that when we talk about equanimity. So here in this context, what I mean with equanimity is that I'm okay with whatever I experience. And I'm not focused on, do I like it or not? You know, and because do I like it or not is an emotional reaction. Do I like it? Then attachment follows. Do I not like it? Then aversion follows. That is an emotional reaction. But if I know that, well, you know, sometimes you like things, sometimes you don't like things, that doesn't necessarily have to do with the thing. It has to do with my experience. It has to do with my state of mind. It has to do with my karma. It has to do with, that's coming from me. Why would I react towards that object or towards that person coming from something that is caused by myself, that is coming from my mind? Why would I do that? It has nothing to do with what is going on outside. So I'm talking about that equanimity within the 4 immeasurables. So when we practice the 4 immeasurables, we include all sentient beings, you know. And I think I mentioned that before. Sometimes when we think about all sentient beings, we think about everybody else except ourselves, right? But the 4 immeasurables is about everybody else, including yourself. Let me have a look at the time. So I will come back to the immeasurables because we do a meditation on that. But I want to go now to, so practicing the 4 immeasurables. Some people do that every morning. And that helps to open the heart at the beginning of the day. Helps to remember, this is what I want my life to be about, that I want everyone to have that, including myself. And so then the other thing that we can do, which is very helpful to make our practice stronger, is setting a conscious intention and making a dedication at the end of the day. So before we practice, we train our mind in compassion, we normally set a positive intention. And for this, we can connect with a deeper aspiration and think certain thoughts that represent our aspiration. This doesn't come naturally. We need to do this deliberately. We need to sit down and really think about it. You know, every action that we do is preceded by a motivation, but normally we are not really aware of that. And so when we are not aware of that, we're normally coming from attachment or aversion. That is what motivates our action. That is what directs our action. So then the emotions are in charge, right? And when the emotions are in charge, we have seen that the only thing they do is they create the causes for suffering. So when we set an intentional motivation in the morning, you start to you do the same as what we do before the session. You sit down and you connect with your body, you connect with your mind, you bring the mind to the present moment. Maybe you want to take a few deep breaths. And then you think about, what is it that I value deeply? What in the depth of my heart do I wish for myself, for my loved ones, and for the world? And I thought maybe it is nice if we use that for the journaling, that you take maybe 6, 7, 8 minutes to connect with that in yourself. What do I value deeply? And I'm going to look for that question to type it in the chat box. Okay, here it is. So take maybe 7 minutes to write that down for yourself, and then we'll come back. Was that difficult or helpful? You know, sometimes when you try to set your intention, it can be that nothing comes, no specific answer surfaces. But even if that happens, you know, don't worry about it. Just asking the questions will somehow, and this is my interpretation of what is my own experience, that it will activate your inner wisdom. And although the answer is not yet surfacing, something is going on inside you. And maybe the answer is going to come during the day, and maybe the answer is going to come next week, and maybe But having no answer doesn't mean don't ask the question, right? So you can start every day. What is it that I value deeply? And what is it that I want to do from the depth of my heart for myself, for the world, for others? And sit with that. And if no answer comes, doesn't matter, but sit with the question. It can be so powerful in helping you transform your mind. So Isabel says, the fact that I'm alive is already valuable. It is a gift that I need to appreciate. The world has to come to the conclusion that the dizziness and hallucinations have to come to an end. I need to be a hope. It's wonderful. And the practice was very helpful for Subo and surprisingly simple for Katrina. So what will happen when we do this again and again and again? We become, I think we take more responsibility for our thoughts and actions, and we take more charge of our lives. If we just go with the flow, what is really running the show is your attachment and your aversion. And what is also running the show is other sentient beings, that push you that direction, pull you in that direction, and you just follow. You see where your life is going. But if you set consciously a intention for the day, and I can call that a motivation, that is where your life slowly starts to head towards. It will redirect your life. Plus, you will be much more aware of the choices that you're going to make. Whether that is in the way you react to things, whether that is in the way, where you move towards, you will be more aware why you are here. If you listen to, the gurus who help you to, no, they're not really gurus, but I shouldn't use that word. But like coaches who are going to help you to, you are depressed and you don't know what to do anymore with your life. And they always start with set a goal. Set a goal, and every day you try to connect with that goal. You try to work with that goal. What they do is they use, the goal is always within this life, and it is always driven by attachment. And attachment makes you feel more alive. So in a way, that method works on the surface, right? It appears like it works. But I think something similar can happen on a much deeper level. If we think about the values that we have in life, if we want to get to what is most meaningful to us, that is not necessarily coming from attachment. But it can come from our wisdom mind. Oh, yes, that is what I'm here for, And so that you can project onto the future and say, that is what I want to do. And that will help you to direct your energy. That will also to help you to motivate during the day, and especially when times get more difficult. So when we do this every day, initially we have to think about it. We have to do it deliberately. But the more you do it and the more you sit with it and really feel deep inside, at a certain point, it starts to become more automatically. And so you automatically, motivation shifts from being driven by attachment and aversion to making your life into something more meaningful, or using your life for something that has meaning for you. So that will sink to deeper levels of your awareness when you repeat it every day. And so then what we do in Buddhism at the end of the day, we dedicate the energy of all the conscious effort that we made to follow our intention. And so we can do that by reconnecting with our intention. You know, what did I think about this morning? What kind of motivation did I set this morning? And how did I go about through the day? And you might discover that, you know, there were some moments that you really, when you made a decision that was based on your intention that you set in the morning. And so then you rejoice, wow, how wonderful. You know, I was able to actually bring that into my reality today. Fantastic. And there might be moments of the day that you remember and that you think, wow, it wasn't in my mind at all. I totally forgot about it. You know, so it's like a stock take at the end of the day. How many actions went well, how many actions didn't go well? And then you can dedicate that. So you can dedicate that towards, you know, whatever you feel is beneficial. When we dedicate at the end always to the happiness and welfare of all sentient beings. But you can also dedicate it that tomorrow you will be able to follow your intentions that you set in the morning even better. You know, and it is not just about the next day, but if you can do it tomorrow better, then the day after you can do it better. And then that is going to help you to move into the future and make that aspiration stronger and more visible into your daily actions. So these are the practices that we can do in order to set the mind, to make the mind ready for practicing compassion. So for your discussion group, I'm going to ask you how you can implement the practices like mindfulness, setting the intention and dedication, and the 4 immeasurable thoughts in your life. You know, whether that is your daily life or whether that is the meditations that you do before your daily life, that's up to you. So I'm going to type that into... And then Felipe will put you in the breakout rooms for 10 minutes. And then we have... You're slowly coming back. I'm just waiting till all of you are muted. All right. So was that helpful? Did that help you to, I mean, my intention is that I think actually feel like, oh, I can do that. And if I'm going to do that, it's going to help me to improve my life. So I hope that you know, this exercise had this kind of effect on your mind. So there were a few questions left from before. Which is, there was a question about what are sentient beings. those who possess mind. To be a sentient being, you need to possess mind. That some people say that that is the Buddha is not seen as a sentient being, but he also has mind. So by having mind, in every moment of mind, feelings arise in the mind, and then all sentient beings have the tendency, depending a little bit where they are, but in the mind, that is followed by attachment, and when unpleasant feelings arise, that is followed by aversion. So if we look for animals that we can observe, when they feel hurt, or when they feel threatened, or when we see they don't like it, and they walk away, they try to escape. But when we give them food and we speak kindly to them, we can also see that they like it and that they want to come closer. Right? So these are the characteristics of sentient beings. And even if you look into very tiny little sentient beings, living in the ocean, or they also react with attachment and aversion. They react when something happens that is threatening, that they move away, and when there is something that they can use for sustaining their life, they will move towards that. So then there is a question. Some people do different practices in the morning after they wake up. And so they are all kind of different practices. And then there is the question, what is your morning practice? I don't think I'm going to talk about that. But yes, there are different kind of practices that you can do. And to find your practice, that can be difficult. And I think, mindfulness is always a good entrance to your practice. So even if you don't have a practice yet, you can start doing mindfulness meditation. Bringing the mind to the present moment is extremely beneficial. Even if you do nothing afterwards, that is already really good. Observing your breath, connecting with your breath is already very helpful. Setting your intention for the day is already very helpful. Doing the 4 immeasurables every day, very helpful. Even if you have nothing else yet, you can start there. Oh, Isabel is yawning. Yeah, you were not unmuted yet. I think now you are. All right. And let me have a look. There was a question, how do we know that mind does not arise independence on the body? Do you mean, how do we know that the mind is not part of the body, is not a physical thing? Is that what you mean, Katrina? Because the mind does depend upon the body, right? Without the body, a mind can never manifest as a human being. We need the body to manifest that mind. So the mind depends upon the body. Also, the body depends upon the mind. They work together. If the mind is not feeling well, if you are very upset about something, it has a direct effect on your body. And in science, they have studied that already a lot. What is anger doing to the body? What is, I'm not sure if they looked strong into what attachment is doing. They definitely look strong into what is meditation doing to the body. And so then they can see that when disturbing emotions arise in the mind, they have a negative effect on the workings of the body. When positive states are cultivated in the mind, they have a positive effect on the body. So then the other way around, it also works. When you have physical problems, for instance, if you experience a lot of pain and you're in pain all the time, it is very difficult to generate a happy mind, you know. So that effect is mutual. And so, but the body and the mind are not the same thing. The body is coming from mom and dad. And so we can posit the beginning of the body, and then we can also posit the end of the body. But the mind is coming from the previous moment of mind, which is coming from the previous moment of mind. So we cannot posit a beginning for the mind. We say the mind is beginningless. And it is the mind that is therefore doesn't have an end. It doesn't stop at when the body stops to work. The mind continues. So we say it is not an aspect of mind that goes on to after death, but we say the mind dissolves at the time of death. So the coarse mind, with all the sense consciousnesses, dissolves. The coarse mental consciousness dissolves. All the innate conceptions that we have, they all dissolve. And then the mind dissolves into the extremely subtle mind. And that mind is what leaves the body, disconnects from the body, and moves on. So then Bina asks, in my past, my caring and compassion has led to attachments. How do I deal with the situation? So I think, you know, at the moment, the mind, where we are with our mind, is that the love that we feel, the compassion that we feel is very much mixed with our attachment. And sometimes there is more attachment in a relationship and less love and compassion. So these relationships easily come with problems, and also once the attachment starts to fade, these relationships break easily up. But some relationships that come with a lot of love and compassion and a little bit of attachment. So these relationships you can sustain easily for a long period of time. The mixture is that we as ordinary human beings, you know, we are self-centered. And so we engage in relationships in dependence on the benefit that it brings us. And then when it brings us a lot of benefit, we are willing to give back a lot. But when a relationship doesn't bring us any benefit anymore, it stops. We don't want it. You know, that is because we are ordinary human beings that have a mind which is motivated by attachment and aversion deep down inside us. So the relationships that we have at the moment, they are motivated by what they bring us. What is the benefit for me? And they are based on our emotional motivation. And so what we try to do with Buddhism is we try to bring in reasonings why just being in a relationship because it's benefiting me, that is not good enough. You know, that we can actually apply reasonings that are going to help us to see that even if things are not benefiting me, to help others, to reach out to others. You know, it looks like it is not benefiting me, but when I think deeply about it, that is actually benefiting me. And so then we can help, that can help to transform the mind in a mind that is not just thinking about my immediate benefit and only reaching out to a limited amount of beings who are benefiting me, but I can actually start reaching out to many more beings, whether I like them or don't like them, whether they benefit me or don't benefit me. And so then that happiness that comes from that is much more stable because it is based on reasoning than the happiness that comes from relationships based on emotions. So I would say, just observe your attachment and see what it does to this situation. And in the next few days, we're going to talk about more how to develop that compassion for all sentient beings and how that can transform the mind from an emotional mind that is attached to a mind that is more based on reasoning. And then you apply that to your situation and see if you have more questions or if your question have been answered. So then Preti asks, when a baby is born, isn't that when the mind from the baby is formed? If the mind never dies, how does it become? It's associated with each birth, rebirth. So the birth, according to Buddhism, and I'm not going to call it birth because it's confusing, no? So when does the mind connect with the body? That is at the time of conception. So that is 9 months before birth. Without the mind entering into the sperm and the egg, they cannot multiply. They cannot multiply. So then Katrina says, you mentioned that us withdrawing from an object situation is aversion. But can this not be wisdom if that situation is causing us harm? Or should we stay and try to see our own contribution to that situation? So what we want to get rid of is the aversion, right? But this is a confusion that happens often, that we think, but if that aversion is a disturbing emotion and I want to stop developing disturbing emotion, does that mean that I have to stay when I'm in an abusive situation? No, not at all. You can walk away. You should walk away. You should take care of yourself. But coming from aversion and coming from wisdom is a very different mind. Right? So when you are in a harmful situation, you can still have patience. You can still have a mind that is undisturbed. And at the same time, you can feel, I have to get out of here because this is not healthy. And I think, what we have been doing with our own minds in the last 40, 50, maybe more years of this life in this age, we have been using an attachment and aversion in a little bit too much, totally exaggerated. We have been stimulated by advertising, by whatever is available in the world to use our attachment, and we also have been stimulated to use our aversion. So what we have been doing is winding up that, running in the wheel of the rat. We have been winding that up, so we have been becoming more stressful doing that. So when we unwind, and when we say we're going to stop following attachment, we're going to stop following anger, we're going to stop following aversion, what is going to happen is that we unwind that what we have been doing too much. It is not that you should be worried that you're going to get rid of your healthy aversion reaction. If you're in danger, there is a car coming, you can trust that your body will jump when you need it. But the more you are wound up, the less you actually have access to these healthy reactions. So when we unwind that whole reactive pattern of attachment and aversion, when we unwind that, we actually connect more with the healthy reactions that are there, and they will not go. you know, they will not go. You do not have to worry about that. They actually become more available to you. You become more in line with reality. You become more healthy. So then Koshi says, my understanding is that man is a threefold being: body, mind, the seat of emotions, passions, desires, and appetites, and the soul, the seat of the spirit, knowledge. Should I correct it? You know, so this is a way of labeling certain aspects of the mind, and whether you want to change it or not is up to you. But I would, you know, if we try to listen to the essence, what Buddhism is talking about, we agree there is a body. And then we have a mind. And the nature of the mind is that it is pure from the beginning. And maybe we can relate that to what you call the soul, or the seat of the spirit, and knowledge. And then there are the delusions that arise in the mind, which we can relate to the emotions, right? So that is a different division than Buddhism makes, but at the same time, there is a lot of similarity. So whatever works for you is what you use, you know. It's just good to know what Buddhism is referring to when we talk about mind, that we talk about all these aspects, all together. And in Buddhism, we do not talk about the soul, but we talk about Buddha potential, and that everyone has the potential to develop the potential to become fully realized and to totally purify the mind. So whatever works for you. So then Sri Ram says, you mentioned in an earlier class that in Buddhism, space is the only thing considered permanent. It is the first thing I hear this. I always thought in Buddhism, nothing is permanent. Okay, so no, there are some permanent objects. Space is not the only one, but space is the one that we can connect with. So other things that are permanent in Buddhism is emptiness, the nature of all phenomena. That is permanent. It is like space. And then what is also permanent is when we achieve what we call an analytical cessation. So when we develop a wisdom mind that has the capacity to oppose our self-grasping mind, and due to that, eliminate a whole layer of disturbing emotions. That elimination of the disturbing emotions is a permanent phenomenon, which means that that will always be like that. These emotions are not going to come back. So that is also permanent. All the rest that arises is impermanent. If this space is beyond the knowing mind, how can we know that a space exists which is permanent? So we can know that space. You know, we do want to realize the empty nature of all things. We do want to realize the lack of inherent existence of all things. So you can realize that. You can realize that directly. You can see that directly. But what we normally do is we're not focused on the permanent aspects, right? If we enter into a space, we normally look at what is in the space. We do not look at the space. And then we identify that, oh, this is the space. This is, you know, I'm now in the Gompa and in the meditation hall. And so due to what is in this space, due to that, I call it a meditation hall. But if I would change everything here, and I would make a kitchen and a toilet and a bathroom and everything, I can change this into my living room. right? I define whatever I see with what is in the space. And so therefore we're not automatically looking at that spacious aspect, but when I come in here, I can also look at the space. And when I look at the space, that gives me, you know, I can think, okay, what else can I do with this space? It gives a lot of room for change. And I think the same with our own mind. If we can see that things do not inherently exist, that there is a spacious nature, the emptiness of that object or that person, I can look at that whatever I see in front of me can be changed, can change. Right? Then things are not so concrete. I hope that helps. I'll do one more. Can you drill down on the terms fearless heart? Is heart synonymous with compassion? And fearless, the literal decimation, absence of fear, yes. Yes, I will talk about that, I think, tomorrow afternoon. How about a situation which goes against your values and you feel aversion? How to practice equanimity? You know, practicing equanimity doesn't mean that we do not respond to the situation. But practicing equanimity means that we do not let a situation disturb our mind. So with equanimity, the mind does not get disturbed by being reactive, having attachment to one thing, having aversion to the other thing. When the mind is undisturbed and things arise, because the mind is undisturbed, you have much easier access to your wisdom and to your compassion. And so you can respond to the situation. So we're not going to change, you know, how we see things. We do going to say it's change a little bit how we see things, but we're not going to put ourselves away from life, right? We are fully in life. We are fully present and we see the situation. But what creates so much suffering is that disturbed mind and reacting from that disturbed mind. So we try to generate an undisturbed mind. We try to connect more with what is really important for us. And so then when a situation occurs, you respond from your values, with your wisdom, with your compassion. So Tejas recommends a good talk on aversion and attachment with Mingyur Rinpoche. If you send me the link, I will pass that on to everyone. And then Katrina says, is there any awareness that is outside body and mind? You know, mind and awareness are the same thing. So there is no awareness outside the mind, right? So there are just some sentient beings who we call formless beings. We say they don't have a body, they don't even have a light body. And therefore they have only mind, you know, but other than that, all sentient beings, they have a body and a mind. And of course you can discuss whether a mind can be there on its own, because mind somehow goes together with the body. I will talk about more a little bit, maybe this afternoon, because there was another question related to that. So I will leave that for this afternoon. So this is the introduction to your practice, you know, and if you would repeat that every day as the beginning of, you know, either your meditation practice or the beginning of just your day, if you do that over time, it will change your mind. It will transform your mind. And when you transform your mind, it will transform your life. So I would advise you to start doing that. And then this afternoon, we're going to start talking about developing self-compassion and obstacles that we meet in that and how we can address that in a healthy way. All right, how can we help ourselves to become free of suffering? All right, and I read all your questions and I see all your questions and I do want them to be answered, but some will wait till a better moment in time. All right. So the meditation that I would like to do is on the 4 immeasurables, or and we'll do the. I'll explain while we do it, how we do that. All right. So make yourself comfortable. Give the mind a few minutes to relax. It can be stirred up a little bit by listening to the teachings. That's totally normal. It has been very active. And then we're going to meditate on the 4 immeasurables. And so when we start meditating on the 4 immeasurables, we normally connect first compassionately with our own experience, especially the experience of suffering, and also with unnatural aspirations for happiness. So we could think, may I attain happiness and the causes of happiness. And so you repeat that over and over in your mind. And at the same time you contemplate, what does happiness refer to? And what are the causes for happiness? May I attain happiness and its causes. May I attain happiness and the causes of happiness. And remember that the causes of happiness are virtuous actions. actions in which you benefit others, in which you help others, and in which you protect others. May I attain happiness and the causes of happiness. May I be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. And repeat that over and over again. May I be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. And then think about the causes of suffering. May I be free from suffering and the causes of suffering, which are the non-virtuous actions, the actions that are harmful for others and for yourself. The 10 non-virtuous actions, like killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, harsh speech, divisive speech, gossip, covetousness, malice, wrong view. May I be free of all that. May I never be separated from the joy that is free of all suffering. May I never be separated from the joy that is free from all suffering. And reflect on the meaning of that joy, which is a freedom from delusions. May I never be separated from a state that is free from delusions, which is joyous by nature. May I never be separated from the joy that is free from all suffering. May all beings abide in equanimity, free from bias of attachment and aversion. or did I say all beings? I mean, may I abide in equanimity, free from bias of attachment and aversion. May I abide in equanimity, free from bias of attachment and aversion. And contemplate the meaning of that as much as you can with your understanding. Having a mind that can stay in the present moment, observe what is going on, but you are not reactive. May all beings abide in equanimity. We stay with ourselves. May I abide in equanimity, free from bias of attachment and aversion. And even if your understanding of the meaning of this is not perfect, that's not such a problem. By repeating this over and over again, I believe your wisdom mind knows the meaning, but maybe you're not aware of that yet. But also by repeating it over and over again, you start looking deeper in the meaning, and by connecting with the states of your mind that open up, you will start to understand better and better. So trust the process. May I abide in equanimity, free from bias of attachment and aversion. And this afternoon, I'll explain how you can extend the four immeasurables from yourself to all sentient beings. But it is always good to start with yourself. And then we can dedicate the merits of this meditation, but also of having listened, participated, reflected on the teachings of this morning. And then we can dedicate that positive energy that we have gathered to the happiness and well-being of all sentient beings. And then I wish you a good afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are, and hope to see you back in 4 hours at 5 o'clock Indian time. Thank you very much.